Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to have this talk with you in your community. I think the last time I had a talk with you was some years ago. And I thank Alan for the invitation again that he has given me. So tonight, I have reflected on giving you something that is substantial, something that is real, and as well something that is can put us to a road, masasabi natin, a road to hope. So today tonight I will show you, and actually I will share with you something about the theme, Christ, the cross, and COVID-19. Yung bang, who has the last word? And it is linked with the 7 last words that we shall meditate, especially during this Lent. Yan, it's always linked to Lent, the 7 last words. So I just thought there is something that is magical in those 3 words, Christ, cross, and COVID-19, and what it hopes for us. So as I have mentioned, I'm happy to be here. So I will actually begin noting talaga this one first. Ang sabi kasi ni Pope Francis has mentioned, the crucifix is actually our compass and hope in life. So lately lang to sinabi ni Pope, especially during COVID-19 din. The cross of Christ, the suffering will always be something of what we have done and where we are actually going. So linked with this too is the reality that Nietzsche has mentioned, that philosopher. He said, he who has a why to live can bear with almost anyhow. Siguro for us, as your group, we will be strengthened by, siguro yan, our hope in Christ that becomes our why, so that we will be able to face everything that is with us. So I begin now with discussing these 7 last words that begins, of course, in Golgotha, and that begins, masasabi natin, it begins there, it ends on the resurrection. So the reality of COVID-19, of course, is that safety protocols are there. The new normal, lockdowns, period of uncertainties, GCQ, ECQ, MGCQ, lahat na yata ng CQ, nandiyan na rin. Tapos, of course, for our students, yung flexible learning, online learning, homebound, most of us are homebound. The good effect perhaps is that when we are homebound, we can actually talk more as a family, talk more as relatives, and talk more about even simple things only, even simple things without other things. But also the reality that there was no masses as we used to have, popular devotions, wala din. So it ushers in, parang yung, there is a new normal that happens wherein no one is actually exempt, that each of us actually are part of. And here, sige, what we will try to realize is that COVID during this time comes to us, especially at Lent, as the new cross in need of healing, or in need of a person who will actually initiate that healing, that I believe at the end of it all will start not necessarily from what happens around us, but from what goes inside of us. So what goes on inside of us actually is the start of the healing that is asked of us. Here too, this is what we will actually go through, the 7 last words of Jesus Christ. The first word taken from Luke 23:33 to 34, yan yung, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Very, very symbolic yan, but that was Jesus asking for forgiveness for the people who has placed him where he is now. People who did not understand, ayan, kasama na dyan. Second word, of course, as a summary, yung bang, my God, why have you abandoned me? Another cry. The third word, that one is followed by something that is positive. This day you will be with me in paradise. Then afterwards, woman, behold thy son. Son, behold thy mother. The fifth word is, I thirst. The sixth word is, it is finished. And the last word, of course, the seventh is, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. So what really happened during the 7 last words? Ano nga ba yung nandoon as an introduction? It was actually for Jesus, I believe, not an easy road that each of us has a part into. Para bang yung pinapatay natin si Kristo, that We accompany Christ, pero where do we accompany Him? We accompany Him to His actually death. We accompany to His death. So the 7 last words is always considered, parang yan yung dying sayings of Jesus. Kaya nga, link yan eh. Dying, you destroyed our death. Rising, you restored our life. Pero in all this, God comes, of course, as the truth in our life. And each of us, in terms even of our identity, we actually seek the truth. Then the question nonetheless comes, bakit nga ba? Why did Jesus have to die? Bakit ganon? Wala bang ibang daang o paraang maisip ang Diyos? Wala ba talaga? And then we will learn later, hindi sa wala, pero God was seeking the best answer for it all. The best remedy for it all. The best remedy. So, in sharing in us way of the cross, in the cross, Jesus shares His agony. He shares actually in our own darkest moments. Ngayon siguro for COVID, it's like that. Kaya naman, that the cross become the pulpits. But in terms of COVID-19, sa atin siguro, the COVID becomes parang yung mga hospitals now na talagang in the bubble area is puno na talaga daw. It actually becomes like that. They are, masasabi natin, dying words of Jesus, reflected also biblically, dying words of Moses, parang ganun din kay Stephen, forgive them, and it is in there that that happens. Year by year, we discover, lalo na pag Lent, 7 last words, So para talagang, the 7 last words did not really die. Parang it's something that really, parang it's always alive in us, that 7 last words. Tapos, what is happening is, people are always shouting Hosanna before, tapos afterwards, they are actually shouting for His death. Some silently, silently shouting, silently lonely, some talagang uncertain din, ano nga ba yung nangyayari. Yun din eh. Like COVID talaga ngayon, no? Ang ganda eh. Yung bang, hindi mo talaga alam talaga kung ano na ba yung patutunguhan natin. And that was actually yung sin talaga ng crucifixion eh. There were some jitters, but there were also many uncertainties. For those who actually have seen Jesus' miracles, ano ito? This is not what Jesus taught. This is not just how Jesus healed. Why did He end up like this? And actually, these are cries that we will actually hear too now in times of COVID. People talaga, those who died, many of them actually, wala talagang exemption. Many are young, many professionals too, mga kilalang tao, many the simple ones. And then how have we reacted to it? That is actually what we will try to uncover here now. Kaya nga ba, the COVID-19 seems to be the new or a new cross for each of us that we should face. We should not escape it because it's a reality in us, but that we should actually face it. So we shall actually begin with the first one. Yan. First word is actually, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. Taken from the Gospel of Luke 23:33 to 34. In Tagalog, ang ganda rin kasi, it's always nice also to have that in Tagalog. Yung bang, patawarin mo sila sapagkat di nila alam ang kanilang ginagawa. Jesus was sure of one thing here. Yung word niya na, Father. He was sure very much kung sino yung ina-address niya. He was actually sure of how people are behaving, on what they are actually doing. In front of Jesus, syempre, in front of the cross, ikaw nakapakong ganyan, you are the one cross, you will see on the cross, you will see actually people. Andyan. People you do not, many of them you do not know. Pero many of them are just bystanders. Pero and I believe always when Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they are doing, Jesus saw it in their eyes too. Yung sa mga mata, sabi nga, di ba, the eyes. Nakikita talaga ni Jesus eh. Yung nagtutulakan lang iba, some are pushed to shout, some are paid to shout, some are actually just there for curiosity's sake. Parang talagang, it's an affair that has happened. It's an affair, parang entertainment. But people came. Pero in the midst of that, even in the midst of the cross, na si Jesus Christ napako doon, all He could ever think of was, Father, forgive them. Patawarin mo sila, hindi nila nalalaman yung kanilang ginagawa. Ibang even now, can we say talaga, the things that we do, alam ba talaga natin kung anong ginagawa natin according to our purpose? As how God would have like us to live. Ayan na, as God would have like us to live. Many times din, uncertain tayo eh. Pero in Jesus' words, in this sense, anuman yung nandoon sa kanyang, sa whatever is there in front of Him, even the hatred around Jesus, and Jesus actually at this point saw it. Jesus sees it. Jesus feels it with what is happening around. Nandiyan mga anxiety, but Jesus saw it. At alam din ni Jesus at this point na hindi maganda yung ginagawa nila. That's why nga sabi, forgive di ba? When do you forgive? Alangan man you forgive when good things are happening. Unusual yun, Pero it is actually, forgive them. So may recognition agad that for Jesus Christ, ang ginagawa nila, Ama, it's not right. It's not right. What they are doing is not right. And Jesus recognizing it, ang sabi ni Jesus Christ, Father, ang sabi niya agad is, I see that this is wrong, what people are doing. It is not according to your will. But, ang supplication niya was, forgive them. Yan yung una. That was the yan yung, I think it reflects on so much too on COVID and the cries that we hear around. Yung mga walang pang ospital, walang gamot, ganito yung trato sa kanila sa mga medicals, tapos yung iba rin, ayaw mag-masks, yung mga ganyan pa. That it is not actually something. And Jesus was saying to them, Father, alam nila yung ginagawa nila dapat pero hindi nila ginagawa. Patawarin mo sila dun sa mga hindi nila ginagawa. Forgive them, Father. And siguro sa atin din the place of forgiveness in our hearts. The place of forgiveness in our hearts, ano nga ba yun? Yung bang, for us, yun yung, for the people who just waits there, who just jitters, who hates, who shouts, ang sabi talaga ni Jesus, forgive them. Forgive them. Cry of the innocents. Cry of the innocents. Parang ito yung host na itinataas Every time the host sa misa, when it's being like that, it's actually a symbol of Jesus Christ uniting Himself to humanity. In the cross, what happened is, Jesus actually united people to God. Parang yung hosts, when you bring it up, it unites. This is the offering. It is an offering that will be made. That will be made. At yun talaga And the asking of forgiveness. Dito rin, we could see how Jesus actually becomes an intercessor. An intercessor who understands God, who knows God, pero hindi lang yun ang totoo. An intercessor who knows us. Most of all. And that is actually the reality. Kilala tayo ng Diyos Bakit oftentimes we do not like to approach Him? Kilala tayo ng Diyos. Bakit oftentimes hindi natin ginagawa yung gusto niya? Kilala tayo ng Diyos. Pero ang question talaga is, kilala ba natin siya? In the cross, what Jesus said is, kilala ko ang Diyos. Kilala ko rin kayo. That you will sin. That you will fall. Pero in the midst of that, I will ask God to forgive you. So in terms of COVID talaga, yan yung mga pinaghoy natin. Nandiyo dyan. The cries is there. Everything. The cry of reality. Yan yun sa COVID The cry of reality now is always there. Yung God recognizing that God sinned. That God, parang sa mga scribe, forgot God because of the situation. Yung mga pakitang tao nandiyan na lang. Bakit nga ba sila ganon? Pinakitain ng mabuti, isinukli naman, yung masama. Tinuruan ng totoo, pinanaig naman, yung iba dito. Minahal nga ng lubusan ng Diyos kapag katapos, unti-unti namang yung pagmamahal na yon ay winawakasan. So, in that sense, Jesus actually asked us today, ito ito yung iniiyak ni Jesus, the cry of recognition of reality. Iniiyakan ni Jesus yung katotohanan. Pero hindi siya nawawala ng loob. ano dito is, kilala rin niya naman yung reality ng Diyos at ang hiningi niya agad to save the world. Ang una niyang hiniling, patawarin mo sila, Ama. Paano nga ba tayo magpatawad? Paano nga ba tayo magpatawad? At kilala nga ba natin ang Diyos? Nakikita ba sa ating mga gawain, do people see in us that we know actually our God like Jesus did? And in that sense, ito talaga yung I was not able to make to show you. Pero ito yun talaga eh. When Jesus came to the place of skull with two criminals, one on his right and his left, Father, forgive them. Tapos not only that, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. Yun ha. But even in the midst of that, Jesus said, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. So that was the first word that we could reflect on. Going to the second word now, after that cry of reality, yes, COVID, cry of reality, is actually these words wherein Jesus said, my God, why have you abandoned me? Tapos yung Tagalog nga, it means, Jesus, Diyos ko, bakit mo ako pinabayaan? And where is it seen in the Bible? Gospel of Matthew, sabi dito, now from the 6th hour, darkness fell upon the land until the 9th hour. Yan na, 3 oras yun. The 6th until the 9th, 3 oras na si Jesus. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me? And in that sense, Jesus cries to us, maganda dito eh, yung bang, the Jesus who was so sure of God, presents to us after 3 hours, ha? Kasi perhaps siguro yung mga first hours ni Jesus Christ is kokonti pa. Yung bang, hindi pa talaga yung nararamdaman ni Jesus, yung real feeling. Yung real feeling. After ng 3 hours, on that, naramdaman na ni Jesus. Kaya, dito lumalabas naman yung, it was a test. I think this is a test of Jesus' humanity, wherein His humanity is being recognized distinctly from Jesus. Yung pagka-Diyos niya, tapos yung pagkatao. Ipinapakita. The humanity and the divinity of Christ and the cross is trying to separate. Actually, is trying to separate again. Ang ganda eh, no? That humanity was brought there, pero on the cross, it's a reality. Parang nagsisimula, parang ang nafe-feel ko lang yung human side, nawawala yung sa Diyos. Kaya nga sinabi niya, pero may God pa rin. See, what was nice here was that even in his thoughts, hindi pa rin nawawala. Although, yung kanyang feelings and being ni Jesus Christ was enveloped by the pain and the suffering that he experienced on the nails and the cross, and also the people around, yung mga hatred that he feels, kaya nadadagdagan yung pain. But still, Jesus recognized that God is there. Yun ang no? So from that which is positive una, tas ito na, why did you abandon me? Parang na-feel niya talaga, it was the beginning, parang separation. It seems like the separation of humanity to the divinity of Christ. Jesus feels it more and more now. I do not want to die. The humans cry for God. Ayun, COVID. Wala naman yatang, I think there is no COVID patient who really wanted to die. Kaya ang ganda dito ang cry siguro of people who actually suffered now even more, lalo na yung mga namatayan. Why did you abandon me in times of death? Why did you abandon me? It was actually a very painful encounter and separation, masasabi natin, from God. Yung comfortable places natin noon was being challenged. And it is actually parang it's abandoned not because God leaves us, but because we have left our God. But because we have left our God. And that is also because of the choices that has been made. We cannot see God anymore. And Jesus is forsaken not because He leaves God, but was discarded and put to death by a world threatened by His message. Very true Parang nalimutan. Jesus did not leave God. It seems in this in this cry, Jesus actually felt that God left him. That God left him. But Jesus never. Kaya yun, yung second siguro of regarding COVID, yung the first was about the cry of reality. Sa COVID ng second was actually abandonment. Pinabayaan mo ako, Panginoon. You have left me. And there is actually, that is the feeling of people. Dito talaga, dito nahirapan yung mga doctors and nurses, yung mga frontliners natin. Seemingly, they actually worked hard and still, yung mga deaths, they do happen. It's very, very sad din talaga. Pero, Jesus challenge to transform the death around us. Yung kamatayan, it's the beginning of the challenge. Jesus needed to pass na parang pinabayaan siya to be able to feel talagang, no, ito pala talaga yung reality. Therefore, I have to change this around. Para bang it's here that God actually, it's an atonement, masasabi natin, for those who feel abandoned by God, those who cannot feel His presence, those who feel indifferent to God, and those who live as though they had actually no God at all. Yun eh. Yun eh. Oh. Imagine ito ha. The God who has in the story of Jesus Christ been with him, ang feeling naman ni Jesus ngayon was being abandoned. Being abandoned. At maganda dito yung, hindi naman sa maganda, pero yung bang the earth covered everything. Parang naging dark din pati yun eh. For us, even here in times of COVID, siguro the real question is, how do we transform the abandonment around us? How do we transform it? Ganda siguro sabihin, you transform it, kailangan nila ng mga ganyan. Sige, bibigyan ko sila nito. Ito ibibigay ko to. We will just give material things. It's a very big help. Yung mga material things that we give. Especially for those, yung mga, ayan nga, those who, for us who suffer, mga natural calamities then we are used actually to giving to. Pero the giving starts, of course, in the reality of ourselves. Ano nga ba? Siguro what is so striking in terms of a Catholic country like the Philippines, and as we celebrate 500 years as a reflection, Catholicism that has happened to us, our faith, oftentimes we would question what has it done to our values. Yung values natin. What has it done to our values? Tayo ba ay pinapatay na rin ng the world around us and the values we believe in? Sana hindi. Sana hindi. And that is something that I think on the cross what Christ did was actually parang yung binili ni Jesus Christ yung ating kalayaan, our freedom, so that hindi na tayo so that we will never feel being abandoned by God. Yun talaga eh. How do we show to others that they are not abandoned by God? Kung meron kayong mga kapatid o kayong mga kamag-anak, if you have relatives na talagang hindi nyo kinakausap noon kasi medyo nagkagalit kayo noon, who does the first move so that grace of being loved comes back to your relationship? Who does the first move? And who does the waiting? Who does the waiting? Abandonment is always there. It will always be there unless we make the first move. Yun siguro yun eh. Are you ready to make the first move? Do you actually allow others to make the first move? Or oftentimes sasabihin, hindi, wag ka na pupunta doon. Di ba hiniya ka niya? Di ba he is very much angry with you? Or talagang ayaw niya talaga sa'yo? Pero the first move actually was what Jesus actually want us also to do. That's what Jesus did. In the abandonment that we feel, especially even in the times of COVID, yun sana eh. We have a God we can turn to. We have a God we can turn to. How do we show that God exists with us? So yan siguro yung second word natin for today. So going back naman to the third, I will just go straight. In third naman was something of the Gospel of Luke. Truly I say to you, this day you will be with me in paradise. Sabi niyan, katotohanan. Hindi siya fake news. This is not fake news. What I tell you is this, sa araw na ito, ikaw ay makakasama ko sa paraiso. Hindi makakasama sa paraiso. Makakasama ang ginawa. Hindi oftentimes, ang ganda nung kasi mga words natin in Tagalog eh. Pero that is what Jesus said. Why did Jesus say this? Ang gandang isipin na in the feeling of abandonment, ayun na, Jesus Christ trying to separate, siguro yung kanyang humanity from His divinity. In a sense, symbolic lang yon. Pero what happens is, yun nga. So, ito yon. One of the criminals, this was the setting. One of the criminals who were hung there was hurling abuse him, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other said, and rebuking him said, "Do you not even fear God? Di ka ba natatakot? Since you are under, na pareho lang naman, nandito ka rin sa cross, and we are suffering justly. For us, tama, yung nandito tayo eh. For we are receiving what we deserve for our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." This man has done nothing wrong. Paano kaya niya nalalaman, ano? Nakikita kaya? In the people around you now, yung titingnan mo lang sila, sasabihin mo, mabait ka. Who was the last person really na sinabing, ang bait mo? Who was the last person with when you feel na talagang, ang ganda, parang ang ganda ng feeling, pag ikaw yung kasama ko? Sasabihin sa siguro, ay charot, gagawin siguro sabihin, no? Pero, for us, yun talaga, has anyone ever told you that? Ang ganda mong kasama, yung bang, ang saya mong kasama, yung parang, I feel parang ako yung ako. That I feel that's different. I feel different when being with you. Ang ganda nun no? It was that feeling siguro that Jesus Christ was able to say at the end. Pero sinabihan mo na siya, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And He said to him, "Truly I say to you," ayan, truly, katotohanan, not false, "that I say," kanino? To you. Specific pa yun Hindi doon sa dalawa, sa kanya lang. "You will be with me in paradise." What is paradise? Siyempre, paradise is the happiness that God longs for each of us. Yun yung paradise. Yan yung promise. Yan yung promise. So, here, we could say, it's actually yung the consolation in terms of what we give. It's actually the consolation that is asked of us. Yung when people come to us, the consolation that we give, yung kahit presence mo lang, kahit nandiyan ka lang, alam lang nilang nandiyan ka, they will be able to sleep tightly na. Kasi alam nilang safe sila dyan. I think that is what Jesus would have felt. And the other thing siguro that is very, very nice in this instance was, sabi to ni Archbishop Fulton Sheen noon, sabi niya, when between Jesus and the thief, yan mga ganyan, sabi niya, it's really a wonder that when Jesus went up to heaven, his escort was actually a thief. Yun daw talagang parang security guard of Jesus Christ. Going to heaven, parang yung mga hagad, going to heaven was actually a thief. And it says something talaga what Archbishop Fulton Sheen was mentioning there, and I always like it. Ang sabi niya talaga yung bang, even with us now, anuman ang kasalanan mo, it does not actually exempt you from accompanying Christ to where He wants to go. Kahit ano yung kasalanan mo, it doesn't exempt you or it doesn't actually deny you the truth na pwede kang makasama ni Kristo sa paraiso. Pwede mong samahan si Kristo sa paraiso. You can accompany Christ in heaven and paradise. So talaga namang, yung bang, and it's a promise. Sabi ko nga kanina, what would you have, kunyari, kay sinabihan ni Jesus Christ, "You will be with me in paradise." Ano sasabihin niyo? "Lord, mauna ka na lang." Hindi pa ako nag-enjoy pa ako ng buhay di ba? Pero, kiddingly aside siguro, kung sasabihin siguro tayo ng gano'n ng Panginoon, we would feel actually most happy. We would feel most happy. Kasi yun nga. At anong ginawa lang? What did that thief do? What did that thief do? Ang sabi lang dito, in what we have read, is he defended Christ is an appreciation, got an appreciation from Christ. Hindi naman sinabi ni Kristo, ay, ang ganda na sinabi mo, very, very good yan. Hindi eh. It was actually not. And how did Christ, how did Christ say his appreciation? Not the man. I think Christ would have felt it eh. Ito yung Christ na nagsabing, Father, why have you abandoned me? Pero actually, feeling this, what would have Christ felt? Hindi eh. My Father did not abandon me. Hindi ako inabandon ng Diyos. There was this thief whom I felt His presence was there, was defending me. I did not expect that. Parang ganun siguro yung masasabi ni Jesus Christ. So, ang saya-saya ni Jesus Christ afterwards, yung bang parang nakalubag loob. Ayan sa atin. Ano ba English na nakalubag? His nakalubag loob. Parang naging lighten ang kanyang load. Yan. Yan ang maganda dun. Tapos yung paradise that Jesus wants to take us. God actually wants always, the plan of God, for example, for us is actually to always feel His presence. Feel His presence at doon. Tapos the support that everyone abandoned Him, even God abandoned Him, but there was actually a manifestation of presence. Dito nakikita rin yung bang how humanity, how each of us, I believe, can become a source of paradise for each one. Can become a source of God with us. Can become a source of God with us. Feeling God's presence. And exactly like in this thing, it was actually the thief who experienced the first, masasabi nating salvation of the resurrection, of the crucifixion. Yun din eh. It was actually the thief. Hindi papatay si Kristo. Save na siya. But he was. Kasi yun eh. The death of Christ, yung fullness of the death of Christ, the salvation that Christ actually gives to each one is hindi lang yung salvation when He was actually doing something that is nice, that He healed you. Part of it is actually being united in your suffering muna. Being united with us in our suffering. Saka natin na-feel talaga that the salvation given by Christ is talagang napakaganda. And the reality always here that God is always anxious to save us more than we are anxious to save ourselves. That can never, yun talagang unchangeable sa Diyos. So as I've said, here is sa COVID, in terms of sa COVID, ito nga yun, the support that we give to each other, the consolation. When people come to you, ang dami natin, we see many of this in the internet, mga namatay sa COVID, pero ito, lalo na actually, yung mga, and here we really should pray hard, especially for the frontliners, lalo yung mga doctors and nurses. They are actually tired. And they actually, maganda yung tired ka, tapos may alam mong parang, ay, okay, end rin yan. Yung ngayon parang hindi eh. Pero yun eh. Yung we should pray for them in terms of strength. Huwag sana silang panghinaan ng loob. Makita sana nila yung, like, that thief, na kahit naghihirap na sila in what they do, in what people say, at saka yung suot nila yung mga PPE minsan, ang init nun eh. It's actually very hot. Tapos, yung pang nandun sa ospital, yung time nila sa work, ito, walang mga nurse, o yung mga nurse na kasama nila namamatay na, o yung doktor namatay na. Ano yun eh? Yung bang moments of desperation, bakit ko nga pa ipagpatuloy pa to? Why will I ever continue this, serving people, when I know na baka ako rin yung susunod na mamatay because of what I do? Yun, actually, that was the cry of Jesus na I believe is answered by the thief. And dito, I think, yung support, let us support our frontliners, mga nurses, and yung mga medical people, yung mga those who, even those who face people na ayaw sumunod na maglagay ng masks. Yung ibang mga tao talaga. People who enforce that actually law or enforce the safety and health, we should actually pray for them too. Kasi it's also hard to see rejection from people. Alam niyo nang maganda na magmamask kayo, ayaw. Characteristics of Filipinos talaga kasi gusto yung freedom and all that. Pero yon, we should actually pray for them. Pray for them more. They need strength. They need a good thief. Hindi ko naman sinasabing we are the good thief prayer for them. Pero they need people who will actually support them too. Kasi iba yung ginagawa nila eh. Like on that cross on the third word. Ang hirap talaga ng ginagawa nila eh. And here we see the face of God sa kanila. We see the face of God sa kanila. May they never actually feel abandoned. Or if they do, may they feel a presence like the good thief. May they feel our presence that begins even with a simple cheer, a simple prayer, and a simple good morning to each of them na maganda na, or even a tap on the back. A pat pala, pat on the back or on the shoulder. Sabihin mong, thank you very much for what you do. I think that is something. I think that's our job now. I think that's our job. We who are sinners, all of us, need as well to thank and support our saviors, in inverted commas, the frontliners who are there for us, and those who care. Yan talaga yung that support, COVID and the support that we are asked actually to give. So at this point, we will go to the fourth one. So, from a positive one, number one, then from a sort of negative, why have you abandoned me? And then from a sort of positive, naging positive ulit, yung positive doon, be with me with paradise. We go now to the fourth word. At ano yung fourth word? The fourth word was taken from the Gospel of John. Yan naman yung, woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. In Tagalog, ginang. Ginang ang ginamit, no? Hindi niya sinabing babae. Sinabi niya ginang. Parang yung aba, ginoong, Maria, yung ginang. Ginang at saka ginoo, di ba? Parang hail. Hail yung ano din yan eh. Kaya ginang eh. So yung mga ginang natin is hail. Narito ang iyong anak. Here. Hindi niya sinabing, nandyan yung anak mo, oh. Eto. Here. Beside. Here is your son. Tapos doon naman sa son, sabi, here is your mother. Here is your mother. It's actually a call to recognize relationships. How we appreciate our relationships. How we appreciate the people who have given you birth. How we appreciate people who are there for you. For the young people siguro, those who support your studies, give you food, are there to shoulder to cry on. In those people, actually, how do you want to be? Siguro yan, even for Mary, I think this is all for mothers or even for fathers. Diba? If you have a son or a daughter, ang unang ano niyan is, I want my son to be. I want my daughter to be. My vision for my daughter or my son is to be like this. To be. Wala naman yatang, I think there are no regular parents or normal parents who would wish something not good for our children. And Mary, I believe, would have wished, together with Joseph, something the same for Jesus Christ. He would have wished something the same for Jesus Christ. I wanted Jesus to be. I wanted him to be. Yung bang, looking at Mary now and recognizing Mary, that today's the feast of the Annunciation, hapon pala yun. And today we recognize, we recognize yung yes ni Mary. I don't think Mary had in mind itong crucifixion when he said yes. Hindi siguro niya nasa isip pa yon noon. O kung nasa isip agad ni Mary yon, ay, di Lord, baka maghirap lang yung anak ko eh. Wag na lang. Pero hindi. Mary's yes there is pinanindigan niya yung yes. At the cross, what Mary actually stood for is that he stood for her yes even more. She stood for her yes, her fiat. She stood for it even more on the cross. On the cross. The promise that Jesus made is a promise that Jesus will always be with us. Parang ito na yung new birth of the children of Mary. Yan eh yun. Yung promise na kasama dyan. Tapos, ano rin yung nandun sa ano? If that was on the head of Mary, what was on the head of Jesus? John. What was on the head of John? Ano ba inisip kayo ni John? Si John daw, they always say, is the youngest. Yung mga bunso, anong naiisip? Pagka ganun sasabihin. Sigurado naman, would John have understood everything? It's not in the Bible that he said he understood it. Pero ang sinabi dito afterwards was actually ito. Sige. Therefore, the soldiers did these things. But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus then saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour on, the disciple took her into his own household. That is what John did. John did not really understand, I think, what Jesus was saying at that moment in time. But what did he do? He followed a friend. He followed what the friend is telling him to do. Yung relationship even of John to Jesus and to Mary and Jesus is very much reflected dito. Hindi ko man alam kung maganda o masama yung gagawin o maibubunga nito. I will follow it kasi I believe in you. Who are the people in your life who will really follow what you say? Who? Sino sila? Yung bang kahit na hindi ka na even though you are not, for example, their parents or relatives, pero you will know that they will actually follow you. Whatever you say, hindi naman yung sinusunod whatever you say. Yung comfortable sila in what they trust. That relationship is there. Actually, that relationship is there. And I always say nga, even in terms of husband and wife, which one is more actually deeper? Yung bang sasabihin, mahal kita kasi asawa kita, o asawa kita kaya mahal kita. I love you because you are my husband or my wife, or you are my husband or wife, therefore I love you. Therefore I love you. Kasi yun yung relationship mo. Yun yung relationship mo. And I think in each of that, it calls us to join Jesus in a sense in that cry. We need actually to find in our own heart the joy of loving our families. The joy of our it may not be perfect. Oftentimes ours is not perfect in each of us. Marami talagang kakulangan yung pamilya natin. People, una sa lahat, economically, syempre, pera, yan pinakaano Pera, wala tayo. Minsan, mga parents pa, hiwalay, separated, umalis yung tatay, umalis yung nanay, kayo lang naiwan. Ano pa ba? Oftentimes too, yung magkahiwalay yung mag-asawa, tapos yung nanay at tatay, may kasawang mga iba, yung bang reality natin ngayon That is the reality. And it's becoming, parang naging normal. How do we face them? Should we just say, oo, kasi ganyan yung mundo ngayon. Okay na yan. Okay na yon. Pero hindi I believe we still have to stick with what actually is something that is good for us and with the value that God always wanted us to have. And here siguro yung God calls us beyond ourselves. God calls us beyond ourselves. Parang yung woman, behold thy son is actually like a second annunciation for Mary. Second annunciation. Kakaroon ulit siya ng anak. Pero yung anak niya ngayon, ang nagsabi rin sa kanya, of course, who said it to her was also Jesus, who is also God. Behold thy son, ito na. That was the second annunciation. But, maganda rin yun, no? Actually, when Jesus was born, syempre may mga maternal labor pains. Dito, ibang pains naman yung na kay Mary. Syempre, the pain of a mother. Ganun din. The pain of a mother. Pero yung pain niya was pain kasi ito yung anak ko, bakit ganito yung nangyari sa kanya. Pero yung mother's pain pa rin yun. Maternal. It's a pain that pierces the heart, as was foretold by Simeon before. It's a pain that pierces the heart, and it's there that Jesus is. So yun talaga. And then, sa atin, in terms of COVID, paano naman yan? Ito rin. Relationships. COVID-19 brings us to appreciate more relationships. Parents mo kung may sakit, how do you care for them? How do you care for them? Do you care for them or mas caring mo sa kanya kung ano yung sasabihin, what your friends will tell you or will ask you to do? What of that one is actually there? Okay, for Mary and tsaka for John, they are actually our examples of a relationship in Jesus too. What of that relationship is actually in us? What of that relationship? Okay, now, now we go to the, sabi nating, fifth word na tayo ngayon. Fifth word. So, kung ulatin natin yung una, yung Father, forgive them. Father, why have you abandoned me? Number 3, paradise, you will be with me in paradise. Number 4, woman, behold thy son. Number 5, ito na yung pinakamahaba sa lahat. Hindi naman mahaba, no? Ito yung pinamaikli siguro. I thirst. Thirst is something that is actually negative. Thirst is negative. Katulad ng isa, why have you abandoned me? So, dalawang negative. Isa pa, I thirst. I thirst. Na, in moments of time, maganda na sana yung nauna, di ba? Yung the other word was, okay, masaya na eh. Pero does it mean that happiness will be forever? As we live on earth, as we know, reality of the world, there are challenges that will come. Part ito ng challenges is yung I thirst. Anong sabi dito? Ako ay nauuhaw. Ako. It refers to me. It refers to our own parang mga needs. Nauuhaw. Siguro, speaking of COVID, we could think of this as yung mga what I think of this is like yung mga symptoms. Kasi physical to eh. Anong sabi sa COVID? Kapag may COVID ka raw, either na uubuhin ka, mawawalan ka ng panlasa, you won't be able to taste anymore. Tapos, ano pa ba yun? Sa paghinga, the breathing, tapos fever, yan yung mga symptoms. Physical symptoms. That's very much reflected in the words of Jesus too na fighters. He's in need of something. Nakulang ang kanyang nourishment or merong something not right in what is going on inside his body. Yun din talaga yun eh. Yung bang, I suffer, I am in need. Ganda rin. Again, Fulton Sheen, something dito eh. Si Jesus yung living water, and then Jesus is the one being thirsty. Jesus was the one who talked to the Samaritan woman, give me this water, sir. Pero Jesus now is the one that is always that has said he is again thirsty. He is again thirsty. At saka, what do we actually acknowledge? From whom do we acknowledge our nourishment? From whom? Kanino nga ba? Why do I suffer and what are the things that I need now? If we will examine our life dito talaga, ano yung mga symptoms of what are the symptoms of our needing God ever anew? What are our symptoms needing God and being at peace with God ever anew? Ang kailangan natin talaga dito is yung pag-unawa, pagmamahal, and pagkalinga. Pag-unawa, understanding, pagmamahal, love, and then yung isa is pagkalinga, care. That are the things actually. How do we show it? For those people who thirst, for those people who have symptoms, for example, of COVID, how do we nourish it? Ay, bahala ka na. Hindi, sa hospital ka na lang. Kasi baka mahawa ko. Yung ganun ba, no? And how do we address it? And dito, nakakatuwa rin yung in terms of water, ano nga ba yung ginagawa ng water? Si Pilate, may water. Si Peter, meron din. Naaman, may water. Israelites, may water. Samaritan, may water. Apostles, nandoon din yung water. It's a symbolism actually of water is something that is life. It's something symbolizes life that each of us actually need. Something of that life. Sabi nga, lagi as I've mentioned, ito yung shortest eh. Pero it's actually shows the symptoms. Again, this is showing our humanity. Pain is one that we have discussed. Why have you abandoned me? Pain. This is another one. I thirst. At here we could say sa even if we look at our families, those in our homes, saan nauuhaw ngayon yung mga kasama mo sa bahay? What are they thirsting for now? The greatest thirst that they have now. Yung bang, ang ganda nito, no? One who can change water into wine is now thirsty. That the Lord who needs actually our support in this end is actually needed then. And he who walks on the water now lacks water. I think what is nice always here in terms of this, in terms of the symptoms is, how do we really recognize the limitations of others? Do we respect it, the limitations of others? Do we open our doors to their limitations? Are we able to accept others because of their limitations? Are we able to accept them because of their limitations? And us as priests siguro, we are not actually exempt from that, even our behaviors. We are also human. Oftentimes, nagkagalit din kami. Naiinis, nagsasawa, naiinis. Therefore, meron din kami mga symptoms, masasabi natin. Meron din kaming symptoms. And what do we need? We actually, I believe, we need just to remind ourselves. Even priests actually, kayo as a group, you can also remind us, Father, ang ganito kasi yan eh. Yung mga ganon, actually we need that too. We need also even that pat on the back. Yun eh. Because we also have the symptoms. Hindi kami immune sa COVID. O, kaya in that COVID of parang being human, no one is immune for the COVID of being human. The COVID of humanity, sabi natin, no one is. And each of us are asked to help each other. So here siguro papasok yung number, hindi ko na napakita tuloy yung number 6. Ito, I'll just read ito. After this, Jesus, knowing all things that had already been accomplished, said, I am thirsty. Yan as I've said. And then a jar full of sour wine standing there. So they put a sponge. Sour wine pa yan. Sabi nga nila, vinegar. A branch and hyssop and brought it up to his mouth and he drank it. Yun talaga. Oftentimes naman, sa symptoms natin, what do we give to the symptoms? Yung pinapalala pa rin. Pag may galit na isang tao, ginagatungan. Yung bang, so that the anger will actually be inflamed. Sana hindi ganun eh. Let our symptoms be healed. Let the symptoms be healed. And let us give vaccines to that symptom so that it can actually be healed. Okay, now, we go to the number 6. Ayan. Ito talaga yon. Ito yung second to the last na maiksi. Sabi niya, it is finished. Naganap na. Naganap na. In the gospel, therefore, when Jesus had received the sour wine, yung before, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. And he gave up his spirit. So siguro sa atin, ang ganda nito, no? Yung it is finished, yung bang, there is already it is accomplished. Natapos na, naganap na. Pero, hindi sinabi din yung natapos eh. Interesting yung Tagalog Bible, they will always put not naganap. Ano yung sa atin yung ganap? Ganap is actually fulfill. Naganap. There's a fulfillment. Pero meron din tayong translation na, ang mga nagsiganap, which means characters, that we are actually part of that which can fulfill. Yun ang maganda eh. Ang mga nagsiganap. Tapos yung isa, yung sabi ko na, yung kaganapan, na ano natin, yung gumanap, ito, naganap na, yan yung fulfillment na needed eh. Hindi ito yung tapos na. No, it can never be. God's work in us can never be na yung tapos na. It's actually continuously being fulfilled. At ang maganda dito is, each of us are needed in that fulfillment. Each of us are needed. Salvation is won, yes. Salvation is won, pero salvation continues to happen even until now. Because there are people actually, not that there are people who continually sin, normal na yun eh. Pero there are still people needing to feel God's presence so that they can be fulfilled. They can be fulfilled. And dito, yung bang, for us, therefore, in terms of COVID, it actually shows healing. 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 Naganap na, pero recognize, this is healing, pero recognize on the cross, what happened was, namatay si Kristo. Death yun. So, ang maganda nung, yung symbolic action was, that death of Christ was actually the event that actually pursued or made the door open for the healing to happen. Yun ang maganda eh. The deaths in our lives oftentimes are often that which can make it the healing to happen. And yun ang maganda doon. Why did God allow Jesus to die? So that He could actually heal us. So that He could heal us. Ito yung maganda, no? Pag namatay tayo, if ever, God willing, touch wood. Touch wood. Ibang, how do we want to be remembered? How do we want? Maganda siguro yan, ano? Even from family tables. Sabihin lang natin, sige, kunyari ako. Sige, COVID ngayon. Ka-COVID ako. How do I want to be remembered? How do I want to be remembered? Oftentimes in the films na yun ang natin eh. Pero maganda rin, we ask it ourselves too eh. How do I want to be remembered? It's actually healing. What healing do you bring to your families, to the people around you? What are you a medicine of? Gusto lang ba natin yung healing na would come to us is actually as a medicine that people can take? The healing actually there sana is the one that can support it, and that could actually bring it to us. So it's a cry of relief, cry of deliverance, and it's also a cry of God that it is happening continuously. With our suffering, with the death that happens around us, there will always be hope. Hope is when the fulfillment happens. Hope is never the end. Hope is actually ushers in the fulfillment. And that is something that is good for us. So at that particular point, we now go to the seventh word. Ayan, parang last na tayo. Seventh word, that one is, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit, which in Tagalog, Ama, sa iyong mga kamay, ipinagkakatiwala ko ang aking espiritu. Ipinagkakatiwala ko ang aking espiritu. What did it say? When they came to the place called Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right, and one in his left. Actually, I think this one was the wrong message here. Okay, just bear with me. Anyway, so we know that particular one, the Father, into your hands I commend my spirit, represents actually someone, again, nakikita nyo, the first word, anong sabi nung first word? Father, forgive them. Bumalik yung address niya. Andi dito na naman yung Father, into your hands. Can you see how even the way of yung 7 last words is actually like a vocation story ni Jesus Christ in terms of his nearing glory, masasabi natin. It's actually there. The Father is there again. So, to the question na afterwards, my God, why did you abandon me? Again, the last word, ito, yung answer. Into your hands, I commend my spirit. From an utter distrust is actually a declaration of belief and trust. Ito yung huli. Belief and trust in God. Parang yung let go and let God. Let it go, let it go. Parang yan. Pero, yan talaga eh. When we die, sabi nga ni Fulton Sheen ulit, babasahin ko lang dito, our suffering dies with us. When He died, He freed everyone from the form of life that endures suffering. Ito yun eh. Tapos parang in that death, yung paggano ni Jesus Christ on the cross, yan eh, breathe His last. Tapos ang sabi niya, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Ayan na, yun na yung bang parang Jesus was once again reunited with the Father. Yung bang, yung dito na naman, yung bumalik yung Father, therefore, yung kanyang childish, masasabi natin, become again yung pagka-childlike ni Jesus Christ. Childlike. Yung bang Jesus on the cross. And COVID here in this instance becomes, sabi ko nga, yung first, it was actually yung mga distrust. Why did you abandon me? And here it was mentioned, ipinagkakatiwala, Ama, ipinagkakatiwala ko sa iyo ang aking espiritu. Ito, ibig sabihin talaga nito was, as I've mentioned at the beginning, at yung kanina rin, yung entrusts that God wants, Jesus wants to entrust. Ipinagkakatiwala eh. Therefore, ganun yun eh. Pinagkatiwala, I entrust you this. Ibig sabihin, I give myself. Hindi lang niya inihahabilin eh. Hindi lang inihahabil. Ano ba yung inihahabilin? I leave you this. I bequeath you this. Yung sa kanyang ginamit, ang ganda eh. Oh. Pinagkakatiwala. Yung bang pinagkakatiwala yung ginamit eh. Yung bang, it's like the prodigal son returning to the father and the father recognizing again. Ito. This is, again, that prodigal son wishing, masasabi natin, to return to the father in love. Pinagkakatiwala na naman. So, we prefer oftentimes in life, to do our own ways. Pero at the end of it all, we know that with God, we can do things better. God doesn't stop us from doing our ways. What God actually wants is that the ways that we do will become more significant for our growth. Yun talaga yun. Your actions that you do each time, ano ba yun? Your actions that you do each time, what does it entail for you? Yung people, for example, who are the people you can really trust? And who trusts you? Yun talaga eh. May mga tao bang, that you can really trust, you entrust? Zero for us in terms of COVID, in terms of this, sabi ko nga is, we trust, of course, syempre in God, una sa lahat in all this. Hindi man natin alam talaga what will the future be in terms of sa COVID, pero maganda siguro yung will become significant and hopeful if we know that God is there to trust. And the people, at least your main families, are there actually to trust you too, and that you can actually trust them. At yan yung napakaganda, that you can trust them enough. So, at the closing siguro nito, what could be is that at the close of all this, each of you are at the foot of the cross now. Sasabi natin, kayo na yung nandoon. Pero ang sasabi natin, kayo na yung the new people who have really gone from this to this, from the seventh. You are the ones. Hindi na kayong yung may hate or may mga uncertainties. COVID is there, uncertainties. Pero siguro, kayo na yung new people now. You are the new people now who really now see Christ as, at ang maganda at the huli, that humanity and divinity, again, when He said this, united na ulit eh. Parang naghiwalay noon, parang na-reunite na ulit. And that's what Jesus Christ wanted to do for us. That's what Jesus Christ wanted to do with us. To bring us back. To bring us back to recognize the Father's love for us. So siguro ito lang, as a summary, as a summary, sabi natin COVID, as I've said at the beginning, might be considered as the new cross. First word, Father, forgive them for they know not what I do. Sabi natin, in terms of this, we could recognize yung supplication of Jesus, yung kanyang cry, forgive them, you pray, prayer is that My God, why have abandoned me for COVID? Siyempre, ang dami for us. That God abandons us. Ang tagal na, hindi pa rin. That God, it's too long already that we still is here. So maybe God has abandoned us. But actually, no, God never does. It's we who actually abandon ourselves more than God will abandon us. This day you will be with me with paradise, I guess, is a reference to the support that we give to each other. Especially the support of our frontliners. I could not actually emphasize it more. Those who are in the hospitals, who actually try to help us, even the caregivers of the sick people, and the support that we give. Relationships, who won't behold thy son, how do we appreciate it? In terms of COVID, that we actually help each other in COVID because we are related to each other in many ways. And then the symptoms, of course, the thirst will continuously be there. Symptoms of COVID, as I mentioned. And then we begin actually to recognize the symptoms. Little by little, try to alleviate that symptoms. Each of us would have the symptoms, ang sabi ko na, of our COVID of hatred and COVID of alienation. Then comes also yung healing that Christ would always like to bring to each of us. Yan yung it is finished. Sabi ko na, there are death moments in our life. Yung moment that we feel actually we are not alive anymore because of the problems that happens. Wala kang magawa. Andiyan din. Then we entrust actually. And then yung sa huli is actually that we entrust people. So for us, I guess to sum it all up, COVID as the new cross, Christ as a person who answers and who suffers for us, who gives us hope to return us to the Father even in times of COVID. Siguro, our response, ang sabi ni Jesus lagi, is our response of loving. And ito siguro, I think you can all recite with me actually this one. Sabi niyang, in terms of loving, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardships that I may boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. The God who loves us, the God who suffers for us. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. At the end of it all, love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13:2-8. So yan, in thanking you all, I would like to say again this that I have put at the beginning. He who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. Let us not lose our whys. Part of that why is why Christ died on the cross. That He wants to show us. Let that love, let the suffering of Christ, let that Christ be our how. Let Christ actually be our why so we could face almost any how and do things the way that Christ also has done. So thank you very much again. So for the reflections, I guess each of you would have now time for reflections and later on, if ever, that we could share them all. So thank you again to everyone. Thank you. Bye.